HTML and CSS. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, but that's not really important. You can kind of ignore that. The important thing about HTML is that it tells your web browsers like the content and structure of your web pages. And this is an example of an HTML file. It looks kind of strange if you've never really seen it before, but let's say that like you type this into your text editor, and then you save it as hello.html, and then if you then open this file in Chrome, it's going to look something like this. So it's very basic, and I'm going to kind of go through it line by line with you. All it has is kind of just heading text and paragraph text. So this first line in this HTML document, this doc-type HTML, you need to include it in every single HTML file that you write. And all it means is you're telling the web browser that this file is going to be HTML. So it's important to include it. The next line you see is like this angle bracket, close bracket, and within that it says HTML. So you need to enclose your entire, like the contents of your HTML within these two tags. And everything in HTML is kind of defined in tags. And the structure of the tag is you have the opening, in between you have the contents, and then you have a closing tag. And the closing tag is different because it has that like slash in front of the tag name. And if you look at the HTML, it's all kind of like nested. You can kind of think of it as like boxes within boxes. All the boxes have to be like completely within another. So as an example, if you had something like this for HTML, this is like not allowed in HTML because it's like interleaved. So this is not allowed, and you can only have things like completely within each other. So let's go back, and we see that in our HTML tags, we have two more tags, the head and the body. And you always need to include these two tags in your HTML as well. What the head tag does is it kind of explains important information about your document. So it tells you information that's really useful for the browser and for search engines. Most of it you can't see on the page, but one that we'll look at right now is title. So where title shows up in your browser is like on the top in like the little tab window. That's where your title goes. And so everything that's actually in the body of your application is going to be within the body tag. So here you see like you have like a heading and you have a paragraph, and that's like all of the text within like the browser space. So if we look at the entire thing as a whole again, it's kind of in different colors to show that like everything that's not within a tag, like within the angle brackets, which is in white, is going to show up on the page somewhere, like as text. And so before, in that document, we talked about a couple really basic HTML elements. You have like HTML, head, body. You have the header tags, which go from H1 to H6. For the most part, you'll just be using H1 as like the biggest header. And then you have like paragraph tags. But there are a lot of HTML elements. For whatever you want to insert into HTML, you should just like look it up to see how to insert it. And we're going to talk about just a few more interesting ones. So for inserting links, it's a little bit different from before, because if you think about links, you have like the text for the link that's displayed on the website, right? But you also have where that link is going to, like the URL. And where do you put that information that's the URL? You store it what's called an HTML attribute. So attributes are, the syntax of it is like this, and you have like the attribute name and the attribute value. So here, to insert a link URL, you would have href, which points to the URL, equals, and then within quotes you would have the URL. And so to create our link from before, the syntax would look something like this. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions about any of this? Cool. And so another way to insert links is, let's say you have like another HTML document within the same directory as this one with this code. In order to link to that, you just write like the file name of that. So here we have another HTML file called home.html, and to link to it, you just put that inside the href field. Inserting images is also a little bit different, because if you think about images, there is no text displayed on the page, right? It's just like an image, and you can't put images directly into HTML files because HTML files is all text. So in order to insert the image, you first have to like save it within like the same folder, and then you have to like tell the browser where that image file is. And so this is the syntax for inserting an image. You have like the same like attribute style format from the A tag, and here you're saying like the source or like where the image is going to be like pusheen.gif. So if you open it up in your browser, it would then look like this. But then the other interesting thing about image tags is that there's like no text on the screen, right? It's literally just an image. So you don't actually need like the closing tag. And if you include it, the browser will ignore it, and it's good practice to just like not include it at all. So this is really good if you have a lot of images in the same directory as your HTML file. But if you have like hundreds of images, that's going to get really messy really fast, and you're going to have to start putting things into folders. So now if you have like a directory structure, something like this, where you've put pusheen.gif into its own folder called images, in order to access that file, in order to access that image, you now need to like change the source to something like this, which makes sense. You have like images/pusheen.gif. Another important HTML element is the list element. So you have ordered list, which is like 1, 2, 3 is ordered, and then unordered list, which is like bullets. Unordered lists are actually really important because you need it to like describe like navigation menus and stuff. And then within those, to describe the items in the list, use the li tag for list item. So we're going to do an example. If you just have like the UL tags, it does nothing. There's no like information on the screen right now. And then you can start adding items by adding li tags. And then here we have another one. And it'll like add the bullets by itself. Finally, the last HTML element that we're going to talk about, and this is also really important, is divs and spans. For now, we're only going to worry about divs, which is a block section in a document. So if we look back to the example that we had before, we can wrap the heading and paragraph in a div. So right there, we added the div. And basically what this does is it kind of like blocks off the heading and the paragraph together. So later on, when you're trying to add CSS, and you want to like change both like the heading and the paragraph to like a different font or like a different color, you don't have to apply it individually. You can just like add a div around it and then apply styles to that div. Kind of like divides up the page. So if we look at an example website, we can kind of like take a look at and like think about how the structure of this website was using like divs. So obviously like the entire thing is going to be the body. And then you kind of have this like middle part, which is a div by itself. You can kind of tell because like it's kind of like centered, the width is smaller than the entire width of like the web page. And then within that, you also have a bunch of smaller divs because it has its own like border and there's like kind of space between it that's like the background color, right? So those are each its own divs. And then you have smaller ones within. And this kind of like gets down to the smallest size almost. If you look at the XKCD logo, that's probably not a div anymore. That's probably just an image. And the ones on the top left, those are probably like an unordered list. And then you keep going down to like the smallest element. Yeah, so these are all the basics of HTML. And now we're going to talk a little bit about CSS, which are cascading style sheets. And all that is it tells your web browser how stuff looks. So this is Facebook. This is how you see Facebook when you go into your browser. Without CSS, it would look something like this. Everything is there. You see like the images, the links, everything, but there's no formatting, no styles, whatever. That's like all CSS. So this is kind of like the basic syntax of CSS. So before when we talked about p tags for paragraphs, that's what this is pointing to. It's a selector. It says that I'm going to select all the p tags in the HTML, and I'm going to apply this styling in the 3 lines after. And the styling is always like in this format. It's property, value, semicolon. And for this, what this says is that all p tags in my HTML document are going to have the color red, the font Arial, and it's going to have font size 24 points. And so if we think back to this HTML document that we had before, first I'm going to like simplify it a little bit by just like hiding everything that's not the body, so it's a little shorter because we don't really care about everything else right now. And then if we add a paragraph just to like make things interesting, and then we apply the style, you see that our two paragraphs that we have are now red, and their font is now Arial. So what if you only want to target the info? So like you think that the info paragraph is really important, and you want to make it red, but not the other paragraph. What you can do is you can give it a class name. So this is kind of like saying, oh, I'm going to give this paragraph a special name, so I can just call it by the special name in the CSS. So what we do that is we give it another attribute called class, and you set it to like whatever class name you want to. So here I'm just going to call this paragraph info. And then to select just that paragraph in the CSS, what you do is you have the class name, and then in front of it you put a dot. And what this does is it only selects that one paragraph with the class info. And so as you can see, only that one paragraph is now red. And you can apply the same class to multiple different elements. So if I wanted to make the heading red, I could give the heading a class that's also called info. And that would make it red in Arial. Another way to target things is by using an ID selector. And so here, if you look at paragraph, it has ID is equal to unique. And to select that in the CSS, instead of using a dot or like a period, you would use like a pound sign.
I mean, that was just miscommunication.
The difference between class and IDs are like kind of what it sounds like. IDs are like unique. You're only supposed to use one for each element, and each page can only have one element with that ID. And for classes, it's kind of more flexible. You can use multiple classes for the same element. You can use like a bunch of different elements can have like the same class. In general, you should be careful about using IDs because they're so inflexible. So like if you wanted to give another element that same styling, you should be like using classes. So now you know like the basics of like HTML and CSS, but how do you actually combine them? You can open up an HTML in your browser, and it would only display the HTML. So how do you tell the browser that like, oh, this is the styling that I want this HTML file to follow? What you do is you include it in the head. So like we said before, head is like the general information about the document. And the way you do that is including like this link tag. So you don't have to worry too much about it. You can kind of just like copy the formatting later on. The important part is like the href is equal to style.css. And what this says is that this browser should be following like the styling within the file style.css for this HTML document. Yeah, so after this we're going to do a CSS workshop. So does anyone have any questions that they want to ask right now about anything? Okay, so let's go do a CSS workshop. You can download the slides at go.6148.io/html and the workshop at /css. I recommend getting the slide just so you can like follow along. And I'm also going to be walking through things for the CSS. Does everyone like have a links? So, to get the workshop, I think this is the first time you guys are doing it. So when you go here, you see like the GitHub page. And what you want to do is like click this button, and you can like get the link to clone it. And this ties it back into like Git, which was the last lecture. So once you have this URL, you can clone it by going to terminal and then cd to like wherever you want to like have that folder with all the workshop stuff. So I have this folder here, and I'm just going to cd into that folder. And then you just write git clone, and then you paste that. And then when you go into your folder, you'll see that you now like have all the contents. This makes sense. Does anyone have trouble with this? If you got it downloaded, just like give me like a thumbs up or something. I can see it. I think we should wait on more people. Okay, I think that should be good. Does anyone need more time or need any help? Okay, wonderful. So the first exercise, just open up packinglist.html in your browser. It looks something like this. There's like, we're going to be like using up this space for our content, and the rest of it is just kind of like formatting for now. And then you can also open that up within like your text editor. So for now, open up the packinglist.html in your text editor. I'm using like Visual Studio Code, but I think most of you guys are using Sublime. And then next what I want you to do is I want you to just like add an unordered list like before. That looks something like this. Just like add like a packing list of like things you'll need to like go find Sunday because he's lost. This is what this workshop is about. We're gonna go packing to find him. If anyone like doesn't remember what like the syntax of this is supposed to be, you can like go into the slides, which hopefully you downloaded.
Yo, Aaron, you can go to the lectures on the course website. The slides should be on.
Okay. Yeah. So if any of you guys don't have the slides, so you just don't know what to go, it should be on the course website.
Yeah.
I don't think I have downloaded.
So let me go. Wait, let me go help you.
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah. So if you're having trouble, I can come or someone else can come help you. Just raise your hand. How many of you guys have like the unordered list ready? You should give me like thumbs up. Okay. That's
Raise
like.
your hand if you have problems.
Monday.
Come around.
really quickly go through how to do it now, because it looks like most of you guys had enough time to look at it. So what you want to do in the HTML is you just have like, you create an unordered list, opening tag, and then closing tag. And then within that, you have list items. So here we have hats. I'm just going to copy this 4 times and change it. You can have blue wigs, horses, Mongolian, cologne, whatever you want to pack to find Sunday. And then when you refresh it, you should see them all there. Yeah, does this make sense? Does anyone have any questions? Also, the solutions are all there within the solutions folder. So if you're like super duper lost, you can go look at it. But like, I kind of recommend you don't because it makes a better learning experience if you follow along. So I also said to give your unordered list a class name. And like I said before, how you do that is just class is equal to, and then you can kind of name it whatever you want. Yep, so that's it for the HTML. If you're still like kind of lost about the code, you should just kind of copy it from the solutions, because after this, we're not going to be touching the HTML at all. We're just going to be dealing with CSS. And so the CSS that you're editing is in styles.css. So you should open that as well. Right now it's empty, so there's no CSS. And then for your CSS, what'll happen is like, right now it looks like just like a bullet points, right? But using CSS, what we can do is we can get it to look something like this, which is a lot prettier. And this is kind of from like the Bootstrap navigation format.
Oh, you have it?
Also open that in Sublime.
And this is done using like purely CSS. So the first thing let's do in CSS is changing the color of the packing list to your favorite color. Go back in the slides if you don't remember CSS syntax. Should be like 3 lines of CSS, so don't overthink it. How are you guys doing? Give me a thumbs up if you finished it. Cool. You should like see it on your screen. Maybe like 10% of you, so I'm gonna keep waiting. If you're having trouble, raise your hand. How many people are done now? Okay, maybe a little bit longer, and then I'll walk through how to do it. Okay, cool. So there are a lot of different ways you can accomplish this, but the way I'm going to do it is just by targeting the LIs. So can do here is you can just target the LIs and then change the color. Like my favorite color is pink, so we're going to change it all to pink. So it's like 3 lines of CSS. And if you then save the file and refresh your page, it'll show up. So now I want you to change it to this like hex value. Yes?
Was it the 7 when you targeted the class?
What?
I tried to target the class instead of AI,
Yeah.
but that didn't work.
Yeah, we can target the class too. So to target the class, you would do dot and then the class name, right? So here I have class is equal to packing list. So I targeted that by doing dot and then packing list in my CSS. And then that should work also, so it stays pink. You can actually change it to a different color, just to confirm. Blue. So yeah, now it turns blue. Yes?
So you have two conflicting sort of guidelines, like say you're targeting the class and then you target the list. Which one will you take?
So this is a pretty like advanced topic. You guys can look it up later. It's like called cascading and specificity. I'll talk about it a little bit later too, but CSS has this like set of rules that tells you like which rule it'll pick if there are like a bunch of conflicting rules. So like in general, IDs are more specific than classes, and classes are more specific than like the element types like P. And so if you target a class, that'll always have like more importance over if you target like an element. Wait, I have it later. Don't worry about that now, just like worry about the really basics of CSS. But yeah, if you have any questions, if you don't, just change the color to this color, which is #777, which is like slightly more gray. It gives it like a nicer feeling than having pure black. Yeah. So I'm going to do that here. #777. Is everyone good? Thumbs up? You're good? All right, so now we have like this bulleted list, but what we really want to do is we want to create like this menu thing, right? And that kind of looks a lot different. One of the main features of it being different is like everything is in the same line and not like line after line. And so the way we do this is we use CSS display property. There are 4 main display properties. Display none does what you would expect it to do. It just like hides the element entirely. And then the more interesting ones are block, inline, and inline block. So if you do display block, well, first of all, there are a couple elements that default to display block, like divs or header tags or paragraph tags. And what it does is it always starts on a new line, and it takes up the full width by default. And you can set like the height and width of block elements. So for our code before, where we had like the heading and the paragraph, those are block level elements. So it kind of looks like the heading should only take up like as much space as the text takes up, right? But if you set like color to the background of it, it actually takes up the entire width. Inline elements take up as much width as necessary. So in this way, you can have like 2 A tags within the same line, or like an A tag and an image in the same line, and you can't do that with blocks. And then kind of like in between, you have inline blocks. So those are also inline, but you can give those like a specified width and a specified height. So these are pretty useful. And there are no elements that, by default, have display inline block. And to change that property, you can just go into CSS and do display : inline - block. And so now I want you to change the display of the list items. Like just play with it. First change it to block and then inline block, and see what accomplishes our goal of getting them all to like be on the same line. show you what it looks like. So I want to change the list items to be inline block. So display inline block. And what happens when you save this is it no longer has that like bullet structure. They're now inline blocks and they're just like all within the same line now. Yes.
Can I look at the
Oh, okay. That's a really good question. So what you want to do is you want to make all the individual list items on the same line, right? If you target the class, what it does is it says like, oh, this entire list is going to be an inline block.
Probably not
So,
actually a problem, but
in fact, like I'm gonna just set the background color of this packing list, the entire thing, let's get rid of this, to be pink. So that entire like packing list is this entire block, right? And if you tell that entire block to be inline block,
it's not equals its code.
all that's going to happen is like this is now going to become an inline block, and that's not what you want. You want each of the list items to be in the same line. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so now we got it to look like this. And next we want to give it a border. So like our navigation menu before had a border. And the way you make a border is by just setting like the property border equal to like these 3 words. This is like kind of shorthand. You can do it longhand, but that's something you can look up like later. For now, just like do it like this. You can try making it like red or like dashed or like 3 pixels wide, 20 pixels wide, whatever you want. So if you're done with playing around with that a little bit, I want you to do this now. So I didn't really teach you how to do this, so what you should do is just Google it. And this is something really important when you code. You should just learn how to Google things. Anything you want to do. The pattern is so like the background color of like the entire thing. I'll show you one. So we want it to look like this, right? So you want the entire background color to be some different color. Yeah. Yes.
Enter the border when you did, and then in the directly well actually this. Well, I mean, anything into one paragraph for the style?
Yeah, you can put things into one paragraph. So like in the solution, I kind of split it up. But here, when I walk through it with you, I'm going to put everything into like the same curly brackets. Was that your question? Okay. wrong slide up before, after the last question, so this is like what you're actually supposed to be doing, looking up. Is anyone having trouble like figuring out any of this? So like to figure out like how to round the corners of an element, you should just Google like CSS round corners or CSS border radius.
If anyone has any questions, by the way, just like raise your hand. Okay.
How many of you guys are done? Wonderful. That seems like a good amount of people, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So what we want to do is this. Is we want to give the entire packing list a border. So we can do border, 1px, solid, hashtag, E7, E7, E7. And then we want to give the entire packing list a background color of F8, F8, F8. And we want to round the corner. So the way you do that is you do border, radius, 4px, 4 pixels. And then when you refresh, you'll see that you now have a border, you now have a background color, and you can kind of see like that there's like a border radius here because the corners are a little bit rounded. All right. So the next exercise is also something that you should just, yes?
Once you're in the border, you add the several arguments, solid number of colors, it doesn't change the order of the arguments, doesn't matter.
For the border, I think like there's supposed to be